Tom, welcome to the How I Became podcast. I am so incredibly excited to have you on, hear a little bit about your story, and of course, the story behind BenchSci. Why don't we start, if you don't mind, with a bit of an introduction to yourself and your journey to starting BenchSci?
For having me here to share a little bit about myself and the journey. So my name is Tom. I finished both my all my undergraduate degrees and my postdoctorate degree at U of T. I came from Hong Kong. I did most of my years of education here in Toronto, and too many years in U of T, if I can say so. Um, my background is in life sciences, and ever since I was very young, I always dreamt of becoming a doctor, like a real medical doctor, not a PhD doctor. But I during my years of research, during my years of undergraduate, I become very interested in research because that feeling of becoming the first person to find out something when you're looking down a microscope, give me that excitement, that, oh, no one else in the world seeing what I'm seeing right now and I'm first to discover it. That is very, very thrilling. And that's what drawn me to actually pursuing my degree in research. I did my master degree in biology, learning about virus entry pathways, and then I go on to continue my PhD degree in epigenetics, which is totally different, but interesting nonetheless. And that's basically how everything got started. And during my PhD years, I realized that, myself is having such trouble looking for good antibodies to use for my experiments. And, that's how, this usually starts, right? I wish there is a better way to do X, Y, Z. And that, became the initialization point of, okay, why don't we start something? Or why don't, we as a community start something to help other scientists find better antibodies so that they can, perform better experiments. And that's how, BenchSci really got started.
Why, and in super layman terms for me, why do the antibodies matter? Like,
Right.
what does that cause? What's the issue there if you don't have that?
It's interesting, when we first started, when we start talking to, potential incubators and investors, they have the same thing. As soon as you talk about antibody, the whole thing, went over my head. I don't know what you're talking about. And then some of them will be asking, okay, what is this antibody? How is it different than, the thing that my body makes, right? But for scientists, antibody is a very, very versatile tool, right? It basically, we use it to label, proteins. These are the things that we want to investigate, right? We would, apply a certain treatment on cell to investigate if a protein that might be related to a disease goes up and down. That is a very common thing to do because we want to see how is this treatment influence some disease, pathogenesis, and then we want to look at the protein. Therefore, this protein is not, visible, so we have to tag it. And basically, the antibody, is tag it, and then you can, see it by fluorescence. It will emit some kind of green, red color, or you see in some other quantitative experiments. It is a very, very versatile tool, and most bench scientists use it, some point in their life. And the biggest problem with them is the quality, right? Most of the manufacturing, process, is not very controlled. The control ones are a good one. Therefore, you need a lot of time. And if you're unlucky and you choose something that is not good, then you waste a lot of your effort.
It's so fascinating and such a different world. I think a lot of the time talking to founders, the business problem is more or less clear or understandable, but
Mhm.
this is in such a different world. I want to get into this in a second, but I imagine when you are talking to investors, you have to give them a whole education before
Right.
they understand the business problem. And I want to talk on that. But before we get there, I find it interesting that you talked about you um moved to Canada from Hong Kong. You had a dream of being a doctor. You get into research, and now you're a founder. So you
Right.
kind of went on this zigzag. Reflecting on that journey and where you are now, and as you know, the podcast is called How I Became. What would you call your journey, your story? How Tom became a founder, or confident, a leader? Like what are the elements that helped you to become who you are today, knowing that your original goal was to be a doctor, but here you are as a founder?
Thinking about a single word to describe it is going to be tricky, but I think I can, describe it as, a process of trying something different, a process of, not following, the more, designed path, if you may. Uh, because most of the research scientists, at least not today, but many, many years ago, has a more kind of structured path laid out, right? You do your research, you get your PhD, and during which time you publish, some high impact journal articles, and you apply for either, a staff scientist, at some, research institute, or you become a professor and you start your own lab. But you know, today or recently, this is becoming harder and harder to achieve. Why? Because I honestly think there is a conflict of interest between the research institute and the student. Right? The researcher or the PI needs a lot of students or a lot of trainee to help them, conduct research. Research is time consuming, and because of the problem I just mentioned, right, it is tough. It is not a easy path. So you need a lot of people in your lab to help you publish. And the quality of research is just becoming so much better now, right? It's just very difficult to get to that kind of differentiation. Oh, I'm better than these other folks, right? Lab is big. Cell Nature Science paper require a big team of people to publish. Everyone have some, contribution to it, and therefore, and a lot of these professors, they become more established, and therefore the availability of new folks coming out from the research to get a job is just becoming harder and harder, right? And this is when I think, maybe this traditional path of researcher, staff scientist, professor is just not for me. It's not like I don't like research. It's just it's getting so difficult to attain or to come by. And I start thinking about, okay, what else can I do? What else, with my, I'm not a good scientist. I know that for a fact because I only published, two measly papers during my entire, postgraduate years. And I think that's why my boss let me left so early. Uh, so I'm like, okay, I cannot compete with these other brilliant scientists in my lab, who publish so much in such high impact factor journal. Right? The other thing that I can do is just to, okay, if there's nothing, I'm going to create a path for myself. What can I do? What secret do I know? I love that book Zero to Run when I talk about secrets. What secret do I know that can help me do something that is different? And the secret that I know is that a lot of us, open secret anyway, within the team or a group of researcher, spend so much time finding good antibodies to use. I'll tell you a story that is funny. I don't tell my boss. Every time when I buy antibody, he would always say, buy one, buy two, don't waste money, right? But for me, money is not important because it's not my money. What I'm more concerned about is my experiment. So I buy like 4, 5, and 6, and then I just try them out. And then anything that don't work, I just kick them below the fridge and pretend I've never seen them in my life. So that's just how bad it is, right? It's just a conflict between, okay, we need to save the lab money because those are, research money, but I have my own time and samples to consider, right? I need to make sure my experiment works. So this is the thing that I know. And then I'm thinking, okay, can I take this, this thing that I know and do something about it? And I think this is probably, the journey, right? The journey of, trying, to create something and to stray away from the traditional path.
Do you think students who are transitioning from academia to more of a business role and not following in research feel that they're betraying
Yeah.
academia, or because there's something also you're changing the world in this one way doesn't mean you're not going to change it in a business sense, but it just maybe the thought process is different.
Definitely a good word. It is not widely accepted anyway, because a lot of PI, right? Which is true, right? They when you first join the lab, there is if a PhD, takes 6+ years. The first couple of years is really wasting time and money on the student. Right? They'll do a lot of mistakes. The experiment won't work. Right? It's only really the last few years is when you really contribute to the lab, help them publish paper, and with all this training, the PI spending so much time on you, and then the student, leaving, this sacred path of research, right, is sometimes considered, yeah, you're betraying your craft. Why are you going to industry? Why are you, serving these other folks? Whereas you should really spend your time in the research, in the nitty gritty of the things, in the science, and
Right.
not in the money. But I was also encourage them to kind of think about, like, you have spent so much time working on this one protein. Like, you can publish a paper, it would be cited maybe, if you're lucky, a few hundred times. That's already a lot, and that's it. All this time and effort that you've put into your craft, not a lot of audiences. But if you apply your work into something, right? Apply, this word is always considered something that is evil. Right? I'm not going to apply my stuff. I'm just doing research. But to apply the thing to help people, to let them see your work, I think bring so much more contribution and bring so much more impact to the time that you've devoted on your research topic.
I think what you're building with BenchSci is showing exactly the opposite, that you really can make a difference and improve the world um, on either side of the coin. So if you feel passionate about something or you see a business problem to address it, and you have used the phrase that you're building your career instead of finding one,
Right.
and a Chinese saying that a young cow is not
Yeah.
afraid. So I want to know how that plays into your life and what that means to you.
I don't know if you watch SpongeBob SquarePants. There was a slide where he, had a rainbow on top, and then he's like, "Oh yeah, I pray for a better world. I know what I'm doing," kind of thing. Like, exactly not. That is completely, opposite from how I get started. Like you say, right? It's just in the beginning, I didn't know that, never thought that so it could be so challenging. I think I had great partners. I really have great co-founders that help with the entire company. Right? I just have this small idea, and then I rely on my partner to really bring them to fruition. Right? I don't understand all the business. I thought that, oh yeah, I'm helping folks, of course they will come and give me money. What do you mean that they're not going to give me money? Right? What do you mean that I have to, I do a value proposition, business plan? What the heck are those things, right? All I know is, I want to buy antibody. They want to buy antibody. I help them find good ones, and of course I can extract some value from it. And that's so not true, right? I think a lot of that's also a lot of pitfall, or a lot of things that make a company or an idea fail. It's just, ideas are great. A lot of the ideas are great, but just as important is, how do you you know understand the business side? How do you extract some values from the service that you're providing? A lot of time is imbalance, right? It's this, and also nowadays a lot of the stuff is free, right? Like, I remember the first days when we went to pitch, pharma companies, and then one of them is like, "You guys are kind of like Google, right? And Google is free, so why are you not free?" And then we just like, what do you mean? Like, we do all these things. Like, what do you mean? Do you think that we have lots and lots of money in the bank and we can do anything? No, we're doing something very impactful for you. So of course we have to extract some value. Like, if you want, stick with Google, do whatever you want. But if you want us to help you to find the best reagent, then there's some value attached to it. So yes, it's
Mhm.
definitely difficult. I would say that with the help of my partners, we have a pretty good we still have a pretty good run, a good thing going. But from only after I enter this, do I understand that to get to where we are, or to become to go through all these hoops that we have gone through, how difficult that normally is, without the help of my brilliant team.
It sounds like you attribute a lot of the success of BenchSci to your co-founder and to your team. How did you find your co-founder in the beginning? Does he
Mm.
have completely opposite skill sets to you? What has that looked like, and how has it kind of evolved over the growth of the company?
Yeah, I would say that in the beginning, I am a molecular biologist, by trade, and I have been all my life, and I really don't understand anything, on the computation side. So I'm very lucky in the beginning to found, two co-founders, um, David and Elvis, who are both of them, PhD candidate at that time, using machine learning in their work to on another topic, neuroimaging. So, and I went on to LinkedIn, and I tried to see, okay, I'm going to use the keyword U of T. The only language I know is Python, so I typed the word Python in it, and the first person that popped up was David. So I called him. I'm like, hey, you don't know me, I don't know you, but I have this idea. Do you want to come out and talk about it? And I guess at that time I was also very open to such a discussion, contribution to help us, prepare the machine learning and the modeling were pivotal to where we are today. And the other person was Elvis, who we just found him by chance, because he was doing web web type work for student organization, and I have some business with that organization, and I met him indirectly. I still remember, at that time we have no office, and he came and talked to us. We were all there waiting for him, and then he came in shorts and flip flops. I'm like, okay, this might not go according to plan. But he turned out great. A lot of infrastructure decision. He's the data guy, so he is very, very good with data, and therefore, with these two, right, we have the kind of the uh, 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 engineering side, taken care of. They're both very, very good, computational engineers. And then balance on who, when we first applied to a incubator from Rodman at U of T called the Creative Destruction Lab, he was a student that was paired to help us, to provide some business kind of perspective on things. And little, like at that time we had like three people, PhD with a lot of brain power, but we know nothing about, the business. We know nothing about telling a story. We still go to investor telling them about antibody, not understanding that they understand zero from what we're talking about. So with Liran, who is really the architect, behind on the scene, to build up the company. It's kind of like two sides. We have the engineers trying to in early days, to build the technology, and then Liran is the person that goes and tells story to sell it. So with this kind of combination, each of us doing what we do best. I think that's one of the reasons why we're here.
How did you, in that first few conversations, how did you pitch the business? Because they were also PhDs, did they understand that business problem initially? Did you have to modify that storytelling? Because I imagine once you got to the investor, translating it from lab talk
Yeah,
to average businessman talk was a communication issue.
yeah. I think pitching the story to Elvis and David was pretty easy, right? I think they are in the business themselves, and
Right.
they and the magnitude of the problem. But as soon as when we apply for Creative Destruction Lab, and I have to tell this story to Iran, I think it is a little bit more challenging. But Iran is a smart guy, so he understand enough to know that this could be something that is transformative for the research community, right? I think at that point in time, we still don't have a good business model. We still don't understand, how to extract value. But good business, start with addressing a real problem. And I think he see that we have a real problem, and a real solution to that problem. And everything else, is try and error. Right? How do we sell extract value? But nothing can work unless we have, a real problem. And I think for the investors, right, we have to really change the story, to make it more understandable, right? Instead of antibody, really change the story. And Liran, spent a lot of time with different, mentors to help him, kind of shape the story. Uh, it is definitely a process, but I think he got it down to a pretty good, formula in the beginning to start talking to investors that really help us to get our funding in the beginning.
And I'm sure there is a lot of twists and turns throughout. I'm curious where you netted out, and I don't know, maybe it has evolved, but what was the business model that ended up working for you with BenchSci?
In the beginning, we were focusing on academia because this is where all we come from, right? And that was
Right.
really not the way to go. I should have understood, from the beginning, right? I know how difficult it is for PI to secure funding, and therefore, by nature, research scientists are stingy. This is just how it is, right? And it is fine because for them, every dollar needs to go into research, right? Things to make them go faster is not too welcome or necessary because they do have a lot of manpower to do that. It's only after we realize that under some connection, indirect connection to pharmaceutical folks, that this is also a problem with the pharma industry, right? All the time I was thinking, or we were thinking, they have they have a lot of resources, right? They can certainly buy everything in the vendor catalog and try them all out and just find the one that is suitable for them. Because for them, time is the more important resources, right? But for pharmaceutical company, time is critical. Like you're racing
Right.
against other companies, and the money that you invest in each of the pipeline is immense, right? So for them, they can buy everything under the sun and test it, but they would prefer not to. And that's where we really come in. Right? That's really our kind of our what we offer, right? We help you find the most appropriate reagent for your experiment so that you don't need to waste time testing it out. Finding something that you want to test, is fine, but and then designing the best way to test it is something completely different. It's like okay, I imagine I want to have a recipe, I want to make a roast chicken or something, right? But actually you can picture it in your head. Oh, I need to use an oven. I need spices. I need to mix them. After an hour, something tastes good will come out. But it's actually not the case. It's an art, right? How much, what temperature? What is the how much sauce did I put? How much of this do I put? Everything is really different onto different cases, right? So we help them eliminate that kind of uncertainty. We tell you, hey, you know what? You want to do this, right? You want to find this protein. These are the publication where they have shown result that such and such product, work very well in this situation, which is similar to what you're planning, right? Therefore, if you use this antibody products in your experiment, it's more likely to give you good results and will save you a lot of time and effort. So this is what we offer them. This is exactly what they need, right? Of course, all the contracting, price point, everything that is also needing time and efforts to learn and understand, where we can come in. But the value that we offer to them is real.
That's a big pivot that you made, and probably in your mindset of when you were addressing the problem, um, a change in who that stakeholder is or who the end user is. Were there other key pivots that you worked through as you were building the company that maybe you imagined it going in one direction, but because of the business need or what worked, you had to tweak the direction?
Another big pivot will be we wanted to do a marketplace that is I think a very logical kind of deduction, right? Because okay, we don't charge academic user subscription or usage fee, right? But it makes sense, right? They come to our platform to look for product review, and therefore
Mhm.
they would stay on our product to buy it, and we would just capture a fraction of that transaction. But that turns out to be not the case because it's actually very mind-boggling, and when you think about it, because I don't know if it's still true to this day, right? But at the hospital that I was working in, when we need to make a purchasing order, we still have those kind of paper, those thin paper, double layer. You write on top, it go to the bottom kind of layer. So they're still using that system to buy things, right? So and of course, it's very difficult to disrupt them because they just like to use that paper system. So they will come to our platform, right? They will find out all the information that you need, and they will just take out one of those purchasing orders, start writing on it, and it's just mind-boggling. Like, why don't you just press the purchase button on our platform and we do everything for you? No, no, we like to stick with our paper. So that is a very tough one to change.
Weird.
Yeah, this big organization with the purchasing habit. And also, they have a lot of relationship with individual vendor, which can get them a lot of
Hmm.
benefit, right? And say, oh, why don't I buy you 10 antibody from you and you give us, this thing for free or something? And those sales will have a lot of this kind of partnership or things going with different labs, right? So for them, again, they would capture all the value from us, using our platform, and then they would still not buy from us. So sometimes something that you feel like is very logical, very reasonable. In real life, there's a lot of things that you might not know that can really block it. So therefore, that was not a very fruitful development. So we have again dropped an idea of selling things from our website.
I want to kind of pull back the theme that you were talking about on how you became through an undesigned path. Like you kind of ebbed and flowed to your journey today. How how have you felt as developing as a founder and a leader of a big company, knowing where your headspace was originally? Well, like what has kind of contributed to that success of where you are
Mm.
today for you?
The postgraduate years, whether it is my master or my PhD years, something that is except my day to day is to critical thinking. Is really to being able to take information and analyze them and to come to some kind of conclusion based on evidence. And also, perseverance is another one. Right? I think it's very similar to a startup. Right? You're running experiments. Right? You're developing some kind of technology. Right? Whether or not you're developing
Mhm.
some kind of technology, based on your research, or now you are basically running experiments. Does this business model work? Does this technology work? Does it bring impact to the user? It's very similar, right? And it's a lot of try and error, and it's a lot of perseverance, and it's to analyze the information, right? Like, why did it fail? Fail where? How can I change it next time? So I do find a lot of parallel between entrepreneurship or early days of startup with the early with my life in the research lab, and I do
Hmm.
truly enjoy the scientific method and to enjoy the research process. So I find it very stimulating to have that kind of always on your toe kind of thing in a startup world as well. And really the interesting is in the beginning where again, like I say, I enjoy the feeling of being the only one working on it. Right? Really, you are the only one
Yeah.
working on your project, on your startup idea, and you have to, try out all these things, all these experiments to make it work. And I really enjoy that process in the early days, and I think that's why that has got me going. Well, not everything, gone as planned. A lot of things, didn't go as planned, but that process of trying and trying and trying is very reminiscent of how I was doing my experiments. And that was very exciting.
I never thought of it that way, like the problem solving element or knowing you have an idea, theory and a hypothesis and trying to prove it out on both sides is what you're working through. It's just kind of the medium is different and
Yeah,
maybe the outcome
yeah.
is different. Really cool. I want to ask you because I think your journey is really interesting. I think you might have an interesting answer to this, but becoming a founder and when you're starting a business, you get feedback from everyone. Everyone
Right,
has something to say
right,
about
right.
your business. What were some of the myths or some of the things you were told when you started the company that you would want to dispel for future founders?
One for this, and it was very, very early days. I was trying to find folks to work on this with me. I know that I know something, but I need a lot of help. So
Mhm.
I would pitch this to whoever I talk to, right? And the first myth I think is people think that if they know something, they could keep it a secret. They cannot share it with other people because someone will steal your idea. But that is absolutely not true. People are not interested in your story. That's how I found it. People are interested only in themselves, and that's very human nature. So when you talk to other people about your idea, right? It's good to talk to as many people as possible because one, you get some validation, right? You get some yay or nay from them, right? They'll either think that your idea is brilliant or your idea is dumb, right? It's good to hear both sides, right? Even if they think your idea is brilliant, that person is going to have a lot of idea on their own. So the chance of them using your idea is very slim, right? Unless you have a patent, a formula that you don't want to, just, hey, this is the formula, right? But the idea on its own, like talking to people, I think talking to people is great. That is, I think, something that a lot of folks worry about. I'm not going to share my idea. No, talk to people. Like you will learn something from everyone. Whether it's good validation or even if it's not, you will learn something on why not. Why is this not a great idea? Right? They will learn. You have to assume that you know nothing, and everyone around you have something to offer. So talk to as many people as you can. Another myth I think is when in the early days I have a few folks that are working on this with me, not my current co-founders. We're just interested to explore if this is even something that is interesting. So we quickly found out, there are other folks doing similar things, right? I mean, like I say, this is an open secret among scientists. We know that antibodies are not reliable and it's difficult to find a useful one. So, of course, there are people with similar ideas, right? And they are a little bit more established. They have been working on this for some time. And a lot of the early, people that I work with to test this out, they got spooked. They're like, oh no, someone else is doing it. We're too late. I mean, and then I told them, right? I'm like, unless you are, very, very, very smart, like Elon Musk kind of smart, right? Like, unlikely that you're going to be the first person to anything. There's going to be someone else doing something similar, considering, how many people in the world, how many research scientists that you know, right? Having someone doing something similar to you is not a bad thing. It's a good thing, right? Because it's a problem. It's a problem that people realize is important enough that they will spend time trying to solve it, right? It's just whether or not they hit the mark, right? Like recognizing a problem and having a good solution to this problem is two complete different things, right? I recognize a lot of problem. I know that in Toronto traffic is very, very bad, but I'm not a road engineer. I cannot solve this problem. I cannot solve it, right? But I know it's a problem. I want to solve it. I cannot. So whether or not your solution hit the mark is the key thing, right? So having competitors, having people that have the same idea is a good thing, right? And the reason why there's no Uber for hammer and scissors is because that is not going to work, right? So that's why, of course, there's no competitor. It's not valid, right? So having something with people thinking about the same thing is a good thing. So it is not a reason for you to leave, right? Unless that solution is already solving everything that you are bringing to you want to bring value to the user. If that's hitting everything completely the same as what you're doing, then might not be a good idea to just dive your head into it, right? Uh,
To your point, if there's already a solution, it's no longer a problem. But if you can improve upon it or make it even easier or better or fill in the blank, then that I think leaves room for your opportunity or your business. But
that's exactly,
like
I think, what the zero to one is trying to say, right? Like, there's a Facebook right now, right? There's many, many other social platforms. Should you make another Facebook too and get people to switch to your thing? Sure, if you can bring, that zero to one kind of differentiation, right? If you just bring a twofold or, oh, I'm making login a bit easier so they're going to come, no, they will not, right? But if your
mhm.
solution, right, if you truly understand the problem and you bring something truly innovative, then by all means, go ahead. Don't be discouraged because someone else is doing something similar.
Tom, this was such a fascinating conversation. I learned a lot, and
Mhm.
I loved hearing your journey from taking a problem in the academic world and transitioning it to the business world, and how you overcame a lot of those challenges from the problem itself, but also communicating that to your investors and translating the problem. It's been really, really interesting to hear.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks so much for joining.